Allegations rocking the Senate are shedding new light on just how easy it can be for a senator to hide the details of their expenses from Canadians. So, what do we know about senators' entitlements and what can they keep hidden from the public eye? Here is your weekly West Block Primer. In the Canadian Senate, membership has its privileges. Now, here's what we're allowed to know. There's a base salary of $132,000 and as much as $11,000 more for committee work. If they live more than 100 kilometers from Ottawa, they get up to $22,000 a year for a housing allowance. There's $161,000 to run their office. And when they're forced to retire at the age of 75, they get a pension, on average about $56,000 a year for life. But that's not all. Senators get a whole slew of travel benefits, but the only travel expenses that the public sees is the total number. We don't get to see where the senators are traveling, why they're traveling there, or the itemized costs. Why? Because the rules say they don't have to. Well, joining me now to talk about the Senate is the leader of the opposition in the Senate, Liberal Senator James Cowan. Senator, thanks very much for being here. And I should just say that we're also going to be talking in a few moments to Charlie Angus, who is the critic of the Senate for the New Democrats. But, Senator, let's start with you. In a recent poll that came out, Canadians seem to have decided decisively about the Senate. The vast majority of them want it either reformed, they want it elected, and at least 40% say if you can't do that, get rid of it. How did the Senate fall into such disrepute in Canadians' eyes? Well,
as far as I can determine, reform or abolition of the Senate's been a good topic of conversation since 1867. So there's nothing new about this. It's a debate that's been going on for a long time. Like any institution, the Senate could be improved. But I think the Senate performs a useful function in our Parliament. I think that senators do a lot of useful work, particularly in committees and in reviewing legislation. And so while I think it can be improved, I don't think that our parliamentary democracy would be improved if it were abolished. We're going through a difficult patch in the Senate, there's no question. This kind of publicity, this kind of focus is not good. We'd much rather...
Well, maybe this behavior is not good.
No, I expect, but we're not the only legislative body that there's been misbehavior in. There are a number of instances recently in the House of Commons where people's expenses and the way they've used parliamentary resources has been questioned. There are provincial legislatures in this country where there have been issues and charges and countercharges and trials and all sorts of things.
But don't you think the difference, though, is that if there is malfeasance in the House of Commons, there is accountability there. If they're found to be crooks, chances are they're not going to be reelected in the next term. You've got a job for life, as do all the, or at least until age 75, as do all the other senators. I mean, doesn't the mere fact that you're not elected open you to a lack of credibility in the eyes of Canadians?
I don't think so at all. I think that if I defraud the Canadian taxpayer of things, I pay the consequences, the same as a member of the House of Commons or anybody else.
Well, except people look at Patrick Brazo and say, well, he's been kicked out, but he still gets his salary. I mean, most Canadians don't have that option.
Well, I think if you look at what happens when a school teacher is charged with a sexual assault or a school teacher is charged with some other inappropriate behavior, they're suspended with pay. I mean, we have a presumption of innocence in this country, and Senator Brazo is entitled to that presumption. He's been charged. He's been put on leave of absence. He's getting his salary, but his access to other resources are severely restricted.
Right, but as you said, if a teacher is suspended because for sexual interference, if that teacher is cleared, the teacher gets his job back.
Absolutely.
Again. And you think that should be the case with Patrick Brazo?
And indeed, they probably have the job with pay while the process is carrying on.
Right, but should Brazo be exonerated? Should he be allowed back into the Senate again?
If he's charged and he is and the charge is dismissed, then it's people are charged and charges are dismissed all the time, and they carry on as before.
So bring him back to the Senate.
Well, he's in the Senate.
Well, yeah, but
Absolutely.
with full privileges is what I'm saying.
Why not?
Why not? Okay,
Yeah,
so if
absolutely.
he's cleared, you say why not bring Patrick Brazo back in?
Absolutely.
Oh.
I see no difficulty on that charge. If there, as you know, there are other matters on. Senator Brazo has some other issues with respect to expenses which are being audited, and I don't know anything about that. But you ask if a charge is made and the charge is due process is carried on and the charge is dismissed, That's the end of it.
Let's say there is a senator who claimed that his residence was in PEI and it turned out that it wasn't, that was the final judgment.
This is purely hypothetical.
Purely hypothetical. I just chose a province out of thin air.
Yeah.
But should that happen, considering where the public mood is right now, what do you think the consequence of that particular thing? Because it's very simple. You're either a resident or you're not a permanent resident. And
to me, it's very simple. I don't think there is any ambiguity about that. It's I think, we all know where our home is. Where do you reside? It's where you pay your income taxes, where you vote, federally, provincially, municipally. What kind of a driver's license do you have? What kind of a health card do you have? I think that for most of us, that's pretty straightforward question.
What rights do Canadians have to know about the Senate? I'm thinking of expenses, for example. The Senate is not covered by access to information. How much should Canadians know about
the House? What have you looked at the regime in the House of Commons?
The same thing at Parliament, but government departments are covered by ATIP.
Well, I think, as I understand it, you can look online on a quarterly basis. We post online the expenses of senators, and you can see how much travel I do between my province of Nova Scotia and Ottawa, and how much I spend outside and where I go. Now, I see no difficulty in disclosing sort of where I travel. I do have a bit of difficulty in going to the Senate. Well, there are people who will meet with me and perhaps with you, who wouldn't want that known, that they were doing that, particularly in this environment where there's a bit of put it mildly, a bit of a chill in the air.
If there is evidence of wrongdoing, could you foresee a senator being expelled from the Senate?
Well, again, I think it would depend on what the wrongdoing is. I think you can't speak in general terms. But if you find somebody, well, you have to be, to me, it's a pretty serious thing if I swear an affidavit, if I solemnly declare that I'm a resident of Nova Scotia when I'm not. I find it difficult to believe that I could represent Nova Scotia properly if I wasn't a resident. So that's a false declaration. That's pretty serious.
Some would say that's a criminal offense.
Some would say that's a criminal offense.
Would you agree with that?
Well, I'm not a criminal lawyer, but I would. I actually would. I think that if you defraud the public purse, that's a criminal offense. If you make a false declaration, that's a criminal offense. If you make an honest mistake, that's another thing.
Senator Cowan, good talking to you. Thanks very much for being here today.
It's a pleasure to be here.
Well, to take this discussion further, I'm joined now by Charlie Angus, the ethics spokesman for the New Democrats, the official opposition. Thanks very much for being here.
Great being on the show again.
Let me just pick up on what Senator Cowan said about Brazeau, that if Brazeau is in fact exonerated of the charges against him, that he should be brought back as a full member of the Senate. Do you agree or disagree?
Well, I think the unfortunate thing with Mr. Brazeau is there was red flags about this guy from day one. Real serious questions about, allegations of sexual harassment, non-payment of child support, questions of financial problems. And so I think the obvious question to Canadians is like, okay, there's a lot of men like Mr. Brazeau out there in the world, but who would think of appointing him to the Senate? This man is set till he's 75, and I think the good senators are somewhat admitting that they don't really have a plan to remove senators.
Let's go to the broader topic of what to do with the Senate. Your colleague, who is the direct critic for the Senate, Craig Scott, was here last week, and he was saying that actually the NDP could accept a reformed Senate as opposed to an abolished Senate. Are you and Craig Scott speaking from the same book?
I think what we're all speaking from is a sense of frustration and disbelief that in 2013 we have an institution that can't be touched, that is not elected, it's not accountable to the people of Canada, that they set their own terms. The Prime Minister vowed 7 years ago he was going to come in and reform the Senate. Nothing has happened since then. These guys don't want to reform themselves.
So what about you? Do you want it reformed? Craig Scott says you do.
I think for the New Democrats is we want to put the question to the people of Canada. And I think once people look at what the Senate does and what it doesn't do, you see you get very little value for money. Let's just go back to 18...
I'm sorry to interrupt, but in the past you've been very, very clear that you wanted it abolished. Now you're saying you want a referendum, and Craig Scott is saying he wants reform. Where is the NDP on this?
Well, what we want is put the question to the people of Canada. I think if the people of Canada see the issue of the Senate, they see the kind of abuse that's gone on, they're going to say, why do we have this institution?
But, if you want a referendum, the polls would seem to suggest that abolition would not succeed. Most Canadians say, by 67% of Canadians say that they want a directly elected Senate. Not what you want. You want abolition. So if Canadians in a referendum said, we want a Senate, but we want it elected, would the NDP then drop its idea of abolishing the Senate and get on board with Senate reform?
I think we would put the question to the Canadian people. I think the Canadian people assume the Senate has a function. Having been here for 9 years, I can tell you the amount of senators I recognize. They're less than fingers on my one hand. I watched them up close. I can't really figure out why we're paying so many people who actually work for the party. They're out there doing political fundraisers for the party, they're stumping for the party, they're organizers for the party, they're bagmen for the party. We're all paying for that. I think when the Canadian public look at it and think about it, they're going to say, why do we need them? If the Canadian public said, this is clearly the status quo is unacceptable, we would want another change, well, as New Democrats, we would listen to the interests of the Canadian people. But what we haven't heard is any movement whatsoever from the unelected Senate to make any change whatsoever, which is why...
You're sounding a little bit like Mackenzie King. Abolition if necessary, but not necessarily abolition.
Well, in my heart, I believe the Canadian people are no dummies, which is why they're upset about the shenanigans that's been going on. I'd bet dollars to donuts that Canadians are going to look at this and say, get rid of them. It's an anachronism. Final
point, and just for clarification, is that an early 2015 election promise? An NDP government would hold a referendum on the future of the Senate?
Well, I can't say exactly what Thomas Mulcair will do when we form government in 2015, but Canadians need to deal with the Senate. It has to be dealt with. It's unacceptable to say, well, they've been there. They're set till as long as they want. They can be convicted criminals. They still get to stay there. Canadians are smarter than that. If we're going to have a truly democratic, accountable government, we need to have democratic accountability in the Senate. And if they don't want to do it, then I say, let's clear them out.
Charlie Angus of the NDP, thanks very much. Always good having you on the show.
Thank you. It's great being on the show.